Great. So,
Let me know if I can.
sorry. It'll be good to maybe quickly kickstart with what the agenda is for the meeting today. We have a fair amount of time, about 2 hours or so. We want to kick it off a bit with the demystifying artificial intelligence. Nurit, my colleague, will say a few words on that. We're hoping to keep this discussion quite interactive. So please stop us if you have any questions while we're discussing this. And then I'll spend a few minutes, about 45 minutes or so, talking about 3 key areas in financial services, which is most relevant to the ABA. One is what is happening really in the banking and financial services space. This whole landscape has changed around fintechs and incumbent banks. Talk a bit about what are some of the key themes and trends there. Game-changing technologies in banking financial services. Where do we see artificial intelligence affecting use cases in financial services and insurance? What are some of the typical use cases that we tend to encounter at Beyond Minds in terms of discussion with our clients? And we'll have a Q&A session. We'll also have a demo session. My colleague Sivan and I will show you a couple of demos. Okay. So who are we? We're Beyond Minds, and basically we've been founded in 2018. We have about 100 employees, primarily located in New York, Tel Aviv, and in London. A big chunk of our population is actually sitting in Tel Aviv, and we are heavily steeped in AI research. We have more than 50 AI researchers, and that has been basically the premise of the organization. Really is how do we bridge this gap from research and proof of concept into production, and that's really the genesis of Beyond Minds. What are we? So we are basically, an A to Z platform to build, deploy, and maintain and manage artificial intelligence across the organization. Our platform is not like a tool or a machine learning tool that's available in the market. We're not, a narrow use case vertical, just focusing on a particular use case like anti-money laundering or KYC, or we are very broad. We're a very broad platform that's covering a number of multiple use cases, and we'll spend some time going through that in a second. Okay, in terms of the actual verticals that we're focused on, we're focused on 3 verticals. The first is banking and financial services. The second is manufacturing, what we call Industry 4.0, and then we also have some use cases deployed in the defense space. And the point being here is that the platform is versatile enough in order for us to be able to have innumerable number of use cases across the board. So we're not specifically focused on one single use case. We can pretty much cover any use case across a variety of different data suites, whether it's natural language processing, whether text and speech, time series or tabular data, and computer vision. Okay, on this note, let me pass it on to my colleague, Nurit, who will kind of demystify for us what is artificial intelligence, sort of lay the context and groundwork as to what we're trying to solve here. Nurit, over to you, please.
Thank you. So you can continue with the presentation, Raj.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, so the idea of artificial intelligence, it's a computer science field from the previous century, from the 50s, in the previous century, that deals with how machine mimic human interactions and human cognitive actions. And though this scientific field exists for about 70 years, the main development happened in the past decade, mostly because the computing allows us today to have the heavy lifting needed for the AI solutions. And also the idea of the open source that opened all over the world researchers to share solutions regarding AI tasks. So it's a very old scientific field, but all the state of the art that we see today happened in the past 5 to 10 years. Next. And you probably know that data is considered today to be the new oil. So AI is considered to be the new electricity. And this famous professor, Andrew Ng from Stanford University, who is also the founder of Coursera, said that 100 years ago, electricity transformed every major industry. And today, AI has advances to the point where it has the power to transform every major sector. And in the next few minutes, I will going to talk a little bit about how AI transforms everything. I believe you can see it in your day-to-day life, okay? First, there is a face recognition that identifies us when we enter to our phone or the applications or even to our offices. It's always with a face recognition. You can sometimes read news that were generated by AI. And you probably heard about all the scandals of the fake news regarding the Brexit and regarding the election in the United States and some other bad events regarding to AI that create news and AI that create the search for news and the focus for news for persons. All the field of autonomous cars consist on AI and AI algorithms that analyze the videos on a real-time manner. Radiology. Most of the radiology today is AI helps the radiologist to analyze X-ray images. All the personal assistants consist on AI. All the Amazon and Siri and Google have a lot of algorithms to analyze your voices and create text from your voices. And of course, many of the processes that we are doing today, like asking for a loan or underwriting of a new customer to an insurance, everything is approved or disapproved behind the scenes by AI algorithms. So the idea is that AI is in our life, okay? And it's in our life to stay. So we need to know how to use it better. And in order to use AI better, we first need to understand the different domains and tasks AI can do. Because there are some tasks that AI can do even better than a human being. And there are some tasks that AI unfortunately can't do, okay? So the different domains, we have 5 domains today. The first one is speech. It's understanding speech. It's transcribing speech into text, classifying speech, for example, classifying if a speaker is, identify a speaker, or classifying if something is said or not said, or mentioned, or what is the sentiment of how things are said. This is all related to the speech domain. The next domain is vision. In vision, we have face recognition, object detection within images, understanding the scenes in videos, finding anomalies in images. These are all related to tasks that AI can help us analyzing vision data. The third domain is text. Text, we can see today how chatbots react and analyze what we ask from them, and they understand our language. Actually, the field of natural language processing advanced a lot in the previous 2 years. Natural language processing allows us to analyze text, understand what happened within a very long text, summarize text, classify text, understand if inquiry is to pass it to one person or another. These are all tasks related to analyzing text. And of course, there's the tabular data field, which is analyzing tables of data. Sometimes these tables of data are on a time manner, meaning it's a time series data. And always we have, we can learn from the past in order to understand what is going to happen next. This is relevant to all the fields and all domains of AI. We learned from historical data in order to understand what is going to happen with the new data. Any questions I would like to answer at this point? This is very crucial to understand the different domains of AI before we continue.
I think, hello, this is Omid. I am a team lead at AI division in our bank. These parts are, I think, these are very obvious for our team here. Maybe we can proceed for more advanced stuff. Thank you.
Sure. I just want to have a common ground for everyone. Thank you.
Yep. We have common understanding on the AI and applications. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll go very fast now. Okay. So AI is considered to be transformative, such as the digital transformation a few years ago transformed our lives. AI is transformative as well. It's causing a major change in our lives or in our processes or in the industries. You can jump. And we can see it in the enormous investments regarding to AI. We can see that in the past 2 years, there are 40% growth in the investments of AI, meaning industries and businesses understand the benefit and the value from AI and invest more and more money in this development. And here you can see it by industry. You can see how many billions are forecasted in 2020 or by 2027 to be spent on the financial and the manufacturing field. And Raj is going to go over it in more deep in a few minutes. And lastly, Raj, just 2 more clicks. Yes, thank you. I would like to conclude the urgency of having AI in your organization is that you need to find, or together with us, we need to find how AI can be transformative. And it can be in 3 ways. It can probably save costs if you do faster processes or maybe replace human labor. It can increase the revenues if you decrease the churn or increase the customer satisfaction. And probably it will augment human. It will help human to do their job in a better way, because it can help you do accurate or faster decision making using past or historical data in order to understand what is going to happen next, and sometimes automate tedious tasks such as going over a large text. This is a tedious task that AI can help us to shorten the time and to augment humans to use AI task for it. So at this point, I hand it back to Raj, and that he will cover how AI influenced the BFS landscape.
Yeah, thank you, Nurit. And if I just may make one comment to Omid's question just about the structure of the session we have today. So Raj will also, we're kind of going deeper and deeper. At the end of this session, it's becoming more technical. We're kind of getting into the depth of the platform and providing demos. So this next section that Raj will present will go further into trends within BFS, some of which maybe, you may be familiar with, but that this will set the context and then we'll continue to go deeper. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. I think, yeah, as Ted said, let's quickly lay the context and home base over here in terms of what are we talking about? The impact of AI across industries. A study was done by McKinsey, and in dollar terms, they showed that the impact in the next 5 years is anywhere from $10 trillion to $15 trillion. And as you can expect, the world GDP is around 90 to $95 trillion. So this equates to adding value of almost 15 to 20% to world global global GDP. If you were to look at the key areas where AI is making an impact and will continue to make an impact, banking and financial services, you see the big bubbles here. Banking, financial services, retail, the consumer divisions, insurance, advanced electronics, public and social sector, so on and so forth. In terms of the wallet size, is what we call the market size for banking and financial services. McKinsey has estimated there's about $1 trillion of value being created over here. The key drivers that they see interest for artificial intelligence is in the arena of sales and marketing and in risk. And in sales and marketing, there are specific use cases that are more prominent than others. They are things like customer service. When I say customer service, I'm talking about how can you use, for example, Noor talked about natural language processing. Can you use natural language processing to be able to summarize a conversation and route that conversation and the priority of that conversation to somebody who can handle a customer service issue better? Can you use speech, for example, on the customer service side of things to be able to monitor sentiment in recorded lines and to be able to route that call to somebody who can handle the customer better? So really, it's about customer journeys and customer retention and reducing customer churn. The other arena on sales and marketing side is in the arena of cross-sell and upsell. The power of data is so huge that companies these days, whether it's consumer companies, e-commerce, retail companies, banks, we're all looking for ways to be able to sell more to existing customers. And using their data to be able to, something that we call in AI, you call it like content filtering and collaborative filtering. Can you look at the customer spending patterns and come up with a way where you can actually recommend something to a customer or recommend a new product to a customer basis past patterns or basis their spending patterns relative to other groups? In the arena of sales and marketing, as I mentioned, around customer churn reduction, I think that's another arena where we're seeing a lot of interest from our clients. On the arena of risk, I think this is also a very exciting area to be focused on. Anti-money laundering. We know that banks, paid $10 billion in fines last year globally relating to financial crime and anti-money laundering. We also know that banks in the US and Canada spent almost $32 billion last year, just purely on the financial crime and compliance people and the compliance setup. So clearly people are, banks are, regulated banks are extremely worried about anti-money laundering and falling afoul of regulators. The use of AI here is absolutely groundbreaking. We have a lot of, and I will go through a bit later around, some of the sort of anti-money laundering use case and also show you a demo of our platform that'll kind of, unpack it for you a bit in terms of how we look at it in terms of the AI aspect. The point here being is that there are multiple different compliance solutions out there, and where Beyond Minds comes in on the compliance front for AML is that we're a layer on top of existing compliance solutions. And what we do is allow compliance teams to better manage their time because the rules-based systems currently, the static rules-based system, are inadequate to handle all of this data, all of this dynamic data. So what we do is we help reduce the amount of false alerts that come out of these transaction monitoring systems. The other arena in the arena of risk is in payments fraud. And again, over there, I'll spend a couple of minutes. We do see that the digital channels due to COVID have exponentially increased the use of digital channels, and we see that fraud in conjunction with that has actually gone up. And then how do you use artificial intelligence to manage that fraud on a real time and to be proactive around customers and particular transactions that may in fact be fraudulent? The third arena in risk is in the arena of credit risk. We see that AI is being used very actively in helping credit departments in banks, or whether they are fintech companies extending credit, to be able to evaluate companies and other people's creditworthiness very quickly and on the fly, and to be able to do that in a matter of seconds as opposed to weeks and months in the past. This is the arena of insurance, and in the insurance space, and you know, I'm not sure the ABA covers insurance, but I do see a lot of banks, you know, in Central Asia and other banks in Europe actually having insurance divisions. So I'll just briefly touch upon insurance here too. The wallet size in insurance is equally large. This is a $1.1 trillion wallet size. And the main arena there where the interest and applications of artificial intelligence is coming from customer service, similar to the way it is for financial services companies. Personalized offerings, you know, if I'm an insurance consumer, what else can I sell me, because I have me as a captive client? You know, I may have an auto insurance, but I want to, you know, the customer realizes I also have a house, and they also realize that I have other things that need to be insured. How can I cross-sell all of these different insurance products to a customer who's only doing one thing? So that's another arena of personalized offerings. And in the arena of enhanced offerings. So over here, what we mean is insurance is becoming almost on a pay-per-usage basis. We see that, for example, in the US, and that may be the case in Europe and Central Asia, is that, for example, motor insurance companies, they come up with a lot more competitive pricing because they're able to access all of your data and see your driving record, to see your, you know, the amount of mileage that you've had on your car, so on and so forth, and to be able to obviously use AI and come to the conclusion whether or not a person needs to pay more or less for their insurance coverage. So it's becoming a more customized offering, and AI is helping that significantly. And this is a survey that's been done by Cognizant of about 230 different firms, financial firms in Europe and the US. And it's pretty clear that every single C-suite guy in financial services is fast understanding the importance of this technology. And if you adopt them, or you will be a laggard and you will be disrupted. The view is like more than about 93% of them 3 years from now think that AI will have a massive impact on their bottom line. But we also see that AI transformation is already underway. So over 70% of these executives, they plan to use AI in 3 different arenas. One, in the first arena is to increase efficiencies and reduce costs, effectively enhancing bottom line. The second arena is in the arena of revenue streams, and then the cross-sell, upsell, as I alluded to in my previous talk. And if you look at the stats around implementation, this is really where the opportunity is, right? The success of AI implementation for companies that have actually started this is about 30%. And then if you look at the various different phases they are in, a lot of the banks, they are either in the initial planning phase or the proof of concept phase or the pilot phase. Very few banks have fully implemented all of their AI projects. So this is what we call the BFSI landscape. and AI trends. Over here, I think it may be pretty obvious to you is that they're seeing a step change in the way banks are operating these days. The banks are at crossroads, and this is not just banks in the US. It's global banks. We're at crossroads. On the one hand, they're very regulated, and they need to have the necessary internal controls to manage their growth. And on the other hand, they are being disrupted by the onset of the fintechs. They are more agile, they're more innovative, they're less regulated, and they're eating into the bank's customer base. There's a survey that was came up by Accenture that basically said that in the next few years, fintechs will eat about $500 billion of total banking revenue streams. That is a huge number. And in fact, when you see banking CEOs like Jamie Dimon and others here in the US are visibly concerned about the onslaught of fintechs. The other piece is around this digital ecosystem and disintermediating traditional financial services. We see that by enabling access to a diverse set of services through a common access point, we see that digital ecosystems, they've transformed the way the customers discover, the way they evaluate, the way they purchase goods and services. And for example, you see WeChat, and I recognize that Central Asia has a very strong relationship with China. I don't know whether you guys use WeChat much, but the WeChat app, you can not only use that for exchanging messages, you can book a cab, you can order food, you can schedule an appointment, you can play games, you can send money to a contact, you can access a personal line of credit. So we see that non-banking businesses like the fintechs and these super apps, they're embedding financial services and products into their journey. And this is basically creating what we think are compelling experiences for customers. And this is disrupting the traditional sort of methods for discovering banking products. So banks are actually having to rethink how do they participate in this digital ecosystem, and how do they use AI to fully harness the power of the data that they have from these digital ecosystems. This is something we call the innovator's dilemma, right? And the innovator's dilemma, there's a guy called Clayton Christensen at Harvard Business School, wrote this great book. And in it, he talks about companies that are being disrupted by technology. And there are so many different examples of that. If you look at a company called Blockbuster, a video VCD company, video cassette company, and DVD company got completely disrupted by Netflix. They had an opportunity to buy Netflix for $50 million, but they didn't. So it's about, can banks look at this sort of seminal moment where fintechs are coming at them hard and fast, and be able to also innovate and reinvent themselves while all of the step change is happening. And we're seeing that that's happening to a certain extent in many banks. In 2020, in a way, in a perverse way, was a very transformative year for banks in the sense that they used 2020 as a basis for advancing their digital transformation. And we saw that AI initiatives for banks, they gained a lot of steam last year during the pandemic, as the bank leaders basically, they stepped up their digitization efforts and their automation efforts. And in terms of payments, and I recognize that ABA, you guys have a division there around payments and anti-money laundering. So some of these use cases might in fact be quite interesting for you all. 2020 was also a very transformative year for payments on the back of the pandemic. And we see that there's a seismic shift in e-commerce. They're accelerating the adoption of digital wallets, peer-to-peer, things like mobile banking, and also the use of cash has dropped quite a bit at the point of sale. So while the adoption for these payment technologies has increased exponentially, we also see that many firms are challenged with managing fraud, and we look at this as a very tailor-made use case for artificial intelligence, because and in fact we're working with a client currently here in the US, which is a payments aggregator for credit unions and community banks. And what we're trying to do there with them is we're looking at hundreds of millions of data points that they have, transaction data points, and each transaction has what we call input features, things like the name of the person, the address, the IP address of the person, all kinds of different metadata, and whether or not that particular transaction was fraudulent in the past. So we take all of this data and into our AI model, and we use supervised learning to be able to help this client effectively manage fraud on a real-time basis, using both supervised and unsupervised learning. And this is another form of anomaly detection, because there are many different use cases within anomaly detection. AML is one of them. The other one is this payments fraud, and there's also in the arena of cyber threat and cybersecurity. So I think the headline statement here is that fintechs, they are disrupting incumbent banks. They are using AI a lot more in their processes than banks are. Across things like personalizing services, evaluating credit risk. As I mentioned earlier, they're able to evaluate credit risk a lot more seamlessly, a lot quicker than banks would, due to the availability of data and availability of AI algorithms. And actually, even around payments fraud. I mean, there's a company called Stripe, which is a fintech, and they have a product called Stripe Radar. It's one of the most sophisticated deep learning offerings around payments and how to capture payments fraud even before it actually happens. And they sell this as a product, as an AI as a service to their clients, to their merchants, for a fee. And we see that this trend is gonna continue to happen, where AI as a service will be offered to clients for a subscription or a fee. And that's very much the I'd say the thesis of our organization. In terms of banks, again, we recognize that there's a lot of, the average return on equity for American banks is around 12%, very, very low. And with this onslaught of fintechs, we're seeing that there are really only two levers that banks can play with. One is you increase revenues, but then their revenues, in fact, are being marginalized or cannibalized by some other fintechs. The other lever is expenses. And AI can go a long way in helping banks and organizations increase efficiencies and reduce expenses and automate processes. So, and we'll allude to some of those use cases as we go along, but banks have no choice but to adopt AI. Otherwise, you're going to be disrupted. And we see that in conversations with many banks. Some of them have already implemented AI, but they're having difficulty bringing them into production. They have hired some of the smartest people from Stanford and MIT and Harvard, and they have these data scientists. But the actual success to production is not very strong. And then finally, I think, and I'll just pause there for a few questions after this, is around the arena of regulation and responsible AI development. And we're seeing that AI deployment is being captured by regulators and industry participants alike. In fact, there are many different regulators, some in Singapore, in Europe and the US, working with industry participants to set up these guardrails of what constitutes responsible and ethical AI. And in that, we basically they're trying to solve for explainability. And explainability is a very important piece, and I'll spend a few minutes on that, as to when an AI model makes a decision, how do you back it up? How you're able to explain to not only the customer that was told whether or not their credit was approved, why that was the case, but also to give transparency to your board and to your the risk departments in your organizations, to make things more transparent. Things like robustness of the models, things like auditability. Do you have the audit trails to be able to come to the conclusion as to who touched a particular AI model decision, and when was that done? So all of those things are going to be very crucial for banks and other organizations in order for them to adopt AI on a more systemic basis going forward. So I'll pause here for a few minutes. Happy to take any questions. Nurit, myself, Ted, and Sivan are happy to answer any questions. Omid, any from your end?
Thanks. Like, it was a great insight that we already had some part as well. You extended it to other side to view it, the importance of AI.
Great. So let's quickly move on.
Thank you.
Excellent. So now some of the challenges, and I'm sure you are very aware of these challenges. So I'll briefly touch upon these, and then we'll go to the more sort of applied aspects of AI. There are many challenges facing banks adopting artificial intelligence, and this is, I think these challenges are quite common across the board. Despite having a huge dollar investment in digital transformation, and a number of banks have scaled AI pretty well, but there are many who haven't. And the reasons for that is that the legacy systems, they are very fragmented. They often lack the capacity and the flexibility and the scalability to support the sort of computing requirements. The second arena is in the arena of interpretability. So, some of the people that we spoke to, for example, a credit risk officer at a very large bank here in the US, he's not getting the transparency he needs, for example, from the credit decisioning around AI models. So how do you make AI models more fair and transparent? Explainability is one aspect of it, but there are other pieces. In terms of data quality on the data front, obtaining and maintaining high quality data is not very easy. There are numerous sort of data quality issues that derail, I guess, the AI adoption for banks. Things like inaccurate data, incomplete data, biased data. Data is trapped in silos across different units. It's hard to integrate with external sources. Missing data, unlabeled data, and then this is something that Beyond Minds is extremely agile at in being able to handle missing and unlabeled data. And then finally, I think around the point around the cloud, banks that have done this well, have they made the transition to the cloud well? These are the banks that have achieved higher scalability and they've reduced their IT overhead and they've had a faster time to market in adopting their sort of AI use cases. So let's maybe spend a few minutes on what are some of the game-changing AI technologies in the BFSI front. And these are a few that come to mind, but the use cases are hundreds of use cases. But these are some of the themes that come out to us in discussion with our clients. The first is around the accuracy in credit risk scoring. So basically, in order to keep up with the radical shifts in consumer behavior and the uptick in credit requests, AI analytics can be used to generate rapid precision data on probability of default, loss given default, and other default related measures. So what this allows banks to do is that this results in risk assessments that allows for previously unlendable applicants. I mean, other things like gig economy workers, students, entrepreneurs, that enables retail banks to widen their customer base and capitalize on the market share of potential, the non-traditional customers. So higher accuracy in credit risk scoring, which means that you're able to expand your client base significantly, or what we call bank the unbanked. The second arena is in the arena of cross-sell and upsell to enhance the customer retention and reduce the churn. So right now, until now, data scientists, they've been operating manually. They've struggled to sort of leverage the up-to-date insights at speed and to uncover some of the hidden patterns and correlations that are inherent in data. and then the correlations that impact cross-sell and upsell metrics. So we're seeing that the banks effectively want to boost their wallet share, and they want to cement their loyalty, the customer loyalty, and they want to reduce customer churn. We're not just talking to retail banks on this front. There is also wealth managers. There are the small wealth managers in the US, for example, guys that we've spoken to. They want us to come up with a risk score for a particular customer that allows them to predict whether or not that customer will move their money to another bank. That's what we call customer churn. And also there's the other arena around customer loyalty and the loyalty space. We've been talking to a customer in India where, they want to be able to provide personalized recommendations to their loyalty customers and this cross-sell, upsell, in order for them to expand the universe of products they want to be able to offer their customers. Fraud detection and compliance and conduct risk. I won't say too much over here because we got a demo coming up. So I'll put this one on hold. NLP and computer vision. We see that unstructured data, it's a lot, right? So it's coming out of a fire hose these days. Investment management firms, they have the problem of ingesting. These are research companies that throw out a lot of research. They have the problem of ingesting large amounts of data, reports, and financials, and to be able to summarize that and to be able to optimize investment decision making. That's a really important priority for them. In addition, we have the research teams. They're going through thousands of structured data documents. Could be corporate financials, could be research summaries, could be thousands of earning call transcripts, broker reports, things like that. So the emergence of things like alternative data, like social media, point of sale data, all of this makes it particularly suitable for AI and natural language process techniques like text classification, text summarization, things like named entity recognition, to be able to extract meaning and to help in the process of automation and improve the decision making. So I'll give you an example. We're talking to a very large data analytics company and giving them a solution. They need about 500,000 research reports to be summarized, and it needs to be done on almost an instantaneous basis. Currently, what they have is hundreds of people sitting in different locations around the world that will look at an article that's anywhere from 1 page to 10 pages long. And it'll take them anywhere, and the real good ones, right? These are really good guys who are able to read reports really quickly and to be able to summarize. Will take them anywhere from 30 minutes to 40 minutes per article. Now, we're working on a solution for these guys to effectively give them a text summarization in 5 seconds for each article or each research report. I mean, this is groundbreaking stuff because, and then you might ask, okay, so how accurate is your prediction and how accurate is your summary? And the double-blind tests that we have done reveal that the summaries that we are generating using our AI models are as good as human or pretty close to human. And the beautiful thing about AI models is that the more information you feed it, so in other words, the more research reports we feed it, we're able to make the model smarter, make it more accurate, and make it quicker. So we see that this is an arena where we're actually deploying a solution for a client and saving them significant amounts of resourcing that they can put towards other things. And also from a cost perspective, make it a lot more ROI positive. You compare having hundreds of people sitting in different locations, paying them, salaries plus benefits, and then you compare that to, a few people that are manning an AI machine, an AI model, and it's spitting out summaries in 5 seconds. So it's a very groundbreaking arena. In terms of insurance, we see 3 areas where.
Hey, Raj. Hey,
Yeah.
Raj, may I suggest just for time management that we maybe skip this slide? Is that okay? Yeah.
Okay. I don't know whether this is a slide that you guys would be interested in, but you know, with all this transformation that's going on, you know, one thing is certain, that the operating models for front and middle and back offices for BFSI, they're going to look very, very different. It's going to create a shift in the structure and the regulation of financial markets. It'll also raise challenges for society to resolve. Some of the arenas where regulators and industry participants alike are focusing on is in the arena of explainability. Explainability of AI is a growing concern for both financial firms and regulators alike. And the opaqueness of AI systems and the complexity and black box nature of it makes it difficult under all circumstances to get an explanation as to why the model has given a certain input. And by the same token, one size does not fit all. So, you know, having an explainability for one model may not be the same requirement for another model. So there's going to be a customization around explainability. And this is an arena where Beyond Minds is a significant differentiator, because we do pride ourselves on us being a bit more of a glass box than a black box. And we provide a very strong explainability for each of the AI decisions that are made. There are other arenas in terms of regulation, systemic risk. You know, the question around financial stability and management of systemic risk. You know, can machines herd together to move markets? That's something that regulators are worried about. In terms of, you know, bias, unfair bias in financial decision making. Bias can take many forms, obviously, the human bias, data bias, model bias. How do you solve for this bias? That's something that we're going to have to develop as we go along and develop these AI platforms. Things like robo-advisory, right? You know, advisors have you know, good faith requirement to act in the best interest of the customer. If you use AI in a robo-advisory capacity, you know, can AI act in good faith? I think that's quite an interesting question. And then the last point really is around, from an academic think tank perspective, can AI systems collude, and can they distort market fairness? This is more of a down the road kind of thing, but these are the 5 areas where banks and regulators alike are going to be focused on. So the bottom line is that unlocking the benefits of AI will require the financial system to learn to navigate these risks as it's introduced into the system. So let's look at where Beyond Minds is in this whole landscape, right? We are covering many of the key arenas here. You know, the key areas we're seeing use case deployment is in the arena of data insights. I did mention about text summarization and data extraction. That's an area where we have a lot of interest. The other arena is in the arena of compliance, anti-money laundering, and being able to reduce false positives, payments fraud detection. There's also the arena of transaction monitoring. So investment banks, they have a requirement to look at every transaction that goes through the front office, and they want to be able to look for any market abuse type of behavior, things like, you know, wash trades or spoofing. And AI is particularly adept at being able to solve for that. Claims assessment for insurance, fraud detection for KYC, personalized insights, I touched upon that, and then the loan underwriting front. So any questions so far on this?
Okay, for the audience, Tamina, and for the remainder of the session, what we're going to do now is we're going to go further into the platform, how it's hyper customized, and how we deliver on the individual specific use cases for our financial services clients. And I believe that Raj will also show a demo. I think we also have a demo from Savan. Does that sound like a good way to continue the session? Okay. Okay, Raj, let's go ahead with that that approach.
Okay. Just give me a second. Let me. Bear with me a second, please. I need to bring up the demo.
Actually, Raj, you know what? Might I suggest that we just skip ahead, and there's a platform slide, I think, later in the deck that shows the platform, the structure, just so we can orient the audience around what we're about to show them. Is that okay, Raj? Can we go ahead to that? I think it shows, how we build different use cases on the platform, as well as bring your own model. Let's spend maybe a minute or two on that first, if that's okay.
Sure. Just a second. Let me reshare this.
Okay. I think that might help to orient and then frame, and then we can kind of go into the demos. And I don't know, Nurit, maybe this would be a good slide for you to help to, cement kind of what we're doing with the platform.
Can you see my screen?
Yep, I can see it. So maybe kind of skip ahead to the platform slide, and then we can go back and cover these, I think. But I think that as a preface to the go forward, yeah.
I don't think that we have that slide.
Okay, maybe, yeah, this would be a good one, I think, right here. Maybe just leave that painted. Let's talk a little bit about that, how we're building on the platform. Where does the platform run? It runs, in public cloud or on-prem. How are we going about, working with our clients? And then I think going back to into some of the use cases and demos, I think would be good. And I know some members of the audience, Omid and other ones may have additional questions around how we're doing this or achieving this, and that would be great. Okay. If you could go, maybe let it rest on here for a moment. We can talk a little bit about the platform.
Sure.
Tamina, Dov, and audience, does that sound good?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yes, of course.
Okay, great.
Let me hand it over to Nurit on this one. Nurit, would you mind covering this, please?
Okay, so the idea of our platform is that we build together the solution for you. It's an AI as a service idea, meaning that after we deploy this solution, and the solution is customized to your needs and data and constraints and the specific pain that you have. And after we deploy it, the solution is keeping the performance through human or automated feedback. So the main idea of the platform, and Raj, if you can go back one slide before that. Yeah, that it has a continuous learning situation, meaning that after we deploy the solution, and the platform is like a box that you inference new predictions with the solution, with explainability, and then there are many algorithms to monitor the data that enters into the system and finds out data drifts with the input, biases, shifts in the target, meaning that there is concept drifts, like predictions are changing, and even degradation with the confidence of the models. So having this idea of the models in production working good or dysfunctional, you can investigate in a very easily manner with a very easy to use interface and give feedback. Sometimes the feedback is interaction with the human in the loop, and sometimes the feedback is automated from outside data. Like for example, data that happens in the reality is actually a feedback to events that happened in the past. And with this feedback, we created internally inside the platform a continuous learning and improvements of the algorithm. And in this way, the model performance is kept a long time. And the model is more sustainable. And Raj, can you go back to another slide, please? So, yes, thank you. So the main benefits from the platform is that it is stable and work with a very noisy data because it has the monitoring system and also some more ideas of enhancing data before it enters to the models. All of it is our core technology and based on a very long time and effort of research that we have done. Sustainability, the idea of a sustained model that keeps the performance and updates and upgrades with new features all the time, using the feedback in order to improve the algorithms. Scalable and accelerate the behavior of AI. We have some customers that the idea of, we of course can bring our solutions very fast. So we can scale and accelerate the AI transformation for an organization. And more than that, the idea of having a model that starts to improve itself over time, it's also some kind of scale. Human-machine collaboration, I talked about it, how to improve the model with the human supervision and feedback. We have some very innovative and even patent data technologies that we can build models with small label data. It is actually very hard to label data, speech data, long text data, and so on, and even vision. It is very hard to label, and it's a very costly task. So the idea is that we can use with our technology a previous know-how and algorithms, and to transfer the learning into the algorithms that we built for you. And finally, it is a one-stop shop to manage all your data and model versions and control all the involvement. And we have multi-monitoring UI in order to see all the UI, all the AI you have in production. Now, how we work together. After you see the demo, when you see the demo, we will emphasize all of these benefits. You will understand how the feedback loop and the continuous learning is working. But in order to build the platform and deploy it to production, there's a short phase at the beginning to understand. It takes a few days to weeks to understand your problems, to analyze your data, and then build the right model for you, because we understand that we have to customize our solutions. It is not off-the-shelf solutions. And then we bring the solutions integrated within our platform, and the platform is to operationalize the AI in production. This is the purpose of the platform. So the idea of AI as a service and what is the offering of our company is that we customize your solution. It's a specific one, it's your use case, it's your data. And then we install it with our platform that keeps this solution monitored and alive over time. Is that clear, or should I explain it a little bit more? I think that after a walkthrough the demo, it is very clear to understand how we operationalize AI in production with our platform. Okay.
I think that's a nice summary, Nurit. And we're also connecting within your existing environment in an elegant way using our API architecture. We can talk further about that. Okay. Turning it back over to you, Raj.
Great. So this is a demo that we've created for the anti-money laundering use case that I mentioned. And just to briefly preface what we're trying to solve for here is there are millions of transactions that go through a transaction monitoring system. And because you have a rules-based system and it's static and it's not catering to dynamic data, AI is well suited to be able to pick up false alerts that might come out of the rules-based system. So let's quickly log into the platform. And this is the what we call the AML screen landing page. And it's the management tool that gives the user 4 management options. The first one is training and retraining. So we know that for the data that's being fed to the model, they might change significantly over time. The model's performance might worsen, or what we call model drift. To solve this problem, it's important to fine-tune the model with newly collected data, and what we call it saying keeping the model on the rails. So to train and retrain function helps you with that. The inference aspect here really is where all of the predictions have taken place on the platform. What were the predictions made, the confidence level of that prediction, and the full transparency in terms of the audit trail. Monitoring, you can monitor end to end so that you have full visibility in terms of what's happening with the platform. And then the annotation tool, unlabeled data is a very common problem in enterprise AI. Annotation tool helps create tags for it and also enhances this human-machine cooperation. So let's quickly go into the demo here. So this is the inference page, and basically what this is showing, it presents all of the transactions for a select period. The period here is February 5th, 2021. Each record will have a transaction ID, whether or not the AML alert based on the rules-based system. So this TMS alert, whether or not it's considered to be an alert, whether or not the Beyond Minds model predicted it to be a suspicious transaction, the severity level, the confidence level, along with the timestamp primarily used for audit trail purposes. And basically, we have several statuses where it's either in review or it's complete or it's been rejected. So to summarize, there are 1 million transactions that went through the system on this day. The TMS alerts, which is basically the rules-based platform, basically said that there are 28,500 transactions that need to be reviewed by the compliance people. Our anomalies, our AML anomaly prediction was 8,497, which is really 70% reduction in total number of TMS alerts. Average confidence of 91%. Human feedback was granted at 21% of the population here. And you can see that the alerts and the distribution of the alerts on an hourly basis. The gray piece is what your rules-based compliance system spat out in terms of the suspicious transactions. And the purple line really is the Beyond Minds prediction, a significant reduction. So let's quickly look at one of the transactions where we investigate. So each transaction will have what we call input features. And these input features are really all of these various different variables that go into the decision-making of whether or not a particular transaction is suspicious. Over here, it's something as simple as customer type, risk bucket, transaction type, amount, so on and so forth. And basis the AML rules-based system, this would be classified as a suspicious transaction because of these 3 different rules that were triggered. 150, 152, 155. I won't go through those. But if we were to look at the Beyond Minds prediction, we're basically saying, no, this should not be considered to be a suspicious transaction. And we'll give you the reasons why, right? So this is the explainability area of the platform, and basically says that all of these green factors over here have a very, very strong overriding positive influence on the AI model prediction. And the red ones are the ones that basically count towards it in a negative way. So as a compliance person, I look at it, I look at this distribution and I say, I do agree with Beyond Minds. I'm going to review it. It's called human in the loop feedback or human augmentation. And then I'm going to confirm this transaction as being valid and genuine and not being suspicious. And I'm going to retrain the model. So now we can see there's a model version 1.2, new model available. And then we see the relative performance. And as data scientists, Omid, I'm sure you're familiar with these terms: precision, false positive, recall, false negatives, and area under curve. So on the precision front, went up by 4%, false positives reduced. The recall stayed the same, area under the curve, which is basically a measure of success on classification problems and AI algorithms that went up. So as the compliance person, I'm looking at this and I say, I'm going to deploy this into production. And now we have a summary of the AI model from inception. So it's been trained on 560 million odd items with an average confidence level of 89%, the average anomalies per hour, and then the average time it took to make a prediction, 230 milliseconds per prediction. And over here, you see the same sort of distribution. There's a 70% reduction in false positives. The confidence level changing by the hour, the alerts volumes, and then you can see that the Beyond Minds prediction is a very small portion of it. And then for the Beyond Minds prediction itself, how many of them actually turned out to be accurate? We see that 99% of them turned out to be accurate. So from a user interface perspective, this sort of modular platform that can be replicated for many different use cases, transaction monitoring and conduct risk, payments fraud, text summarization, we'll show you that in a second. So the look and feel of the platform will be quite similar, but the underlying use cases being covered can be very, very, diverse as possible. So that's a quick summary of the AML platform. And this can be, as I said, it can be applied to any anomaly detection type of use case, including payments fraud.
Thank you, Raj. I just would like to add two more ideas. First, that sometimes the feedback does not have to be a human feedback. Especially in the financial area, we can have an automated feedback through events that happens in the real world. So this is one idea to keep in mind. And the second one is that sometimes the retrain can be automatic, meaning you don't have to, the idea of reflecting the results of the retraining is for having a transparent movement of the platform, but it can also be automatically behind the scenes. And this is the main idea of the platform, keeping the models alive and adjusting to real world behavior.
Right. So as I mentioned earlier, there are some key use cases in the BFSI front. In the AML front, primarily around false alert reduction. And as I mentioned, we've been very successful at reducing the number of false alerts. And we've also been successful in capturing unknown unknowns, and that's using unsupervised learning. So it's stuff that will now be picked up by the rules-based system can be picked up by our platform. Human in the loop augmentation, explainability, as I went through that. And then the net impact is reduced compliance overheads, reduced time it takes to investigate issues. On the arena of payments, fraud, risk scoring. Now, this is quite an interesting arena and may or may not be applicable to, I guess, retail banks in Central Asia. So, you know, as far as I mentioned earlier, the COVID has basically exacerbated the whole use of digital channels. There's been a fraud uptick. And as I mentioned, we're working on a particular solution with the client currently to help them solve this fraud risk scoring. So we're basically looking at hundreds of millions of data points across 300 different features, input features per transaction. And we're basically looking at standard monetary transactions, interactions and other channels, a whole bunch of metadata, like things like account metadata, cardholder metadata, financial institution metadata, fraud parameters, you know, what is the fraud scoring for that particular client? What was the outcome, whether they were approved or declined, and what was the date and the time, and all of those various different things for it. And whether or not the transaction was in fact fraudulent in the past. And then essentially what we're doing is we're coming up with a risk score between 0 and 100, or a probability that a particular transaction is fraudulent, or in many cases has the potential to be fraudulent at a later date, so that they can actually stop the fraud from actually happening and avoid the chargeback to the merchant. The client that we're working with is already seeing a fair degree of success with their own AI and ML efforts, but they're looking to us to provide an alternative contributing tool set. And the data will be used on two fronts. One is to secure the at-risk accounts immediately, and then also to allow them for rule improvement at their own processor level. So that's payments, fraud, risk scoring. This is the arena of actionable data insights. Text summarization is one such example. And we'll maybe move on to the next demo right now relating to text summarization. So my colleague Sivan will cover this. Over to you, Sivan.
Okay.
I'm going to stop sharing here.
Just sharing my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks good.
So as you can see, this is the same login page as Raz presented. Our platform is the same for all use cases. You can just change use cases here, and you will have the same component: the train, the retrain, the inference, the monitoring, and the annotation tool. As for this use case, this is a combination of classification and summarization together, involve two different capabilities: text classification and text summarization, which both under the NLP area. If we are going to the monitoring, so as you can see here, we have 5 different classes, which are according to the data that we receive. We have service order, extension order, show cause order, compensation, and securities. And we have the division of each one of the classes according to different hours. As for each class, we have different confidence level that the model predicts, how much the model is trust in its predictions. So as you can see here, for each classification, we have different line. You can see, of course, that we have the name of the use case, the version, number of items that has been trained off, size, when it has been created, what is the average confidence size, prediction, average per hour, and how much time it took to the prediction itself. Under the classes and the confidence, we have the input quality, which is the input gate, which is filter noisy data. In NLP and text, we have a lot of noisy data. It can be spelling, it can be typos, it can be unknown characters, and those noises can influence on the model prediction accuracy. Therefore, what we are doing, we are filtering all the noises before it's entered into the model. Meaning, if we have something, an article or an email or something with a lot of typos, we will correct the typos first, and only then we will enter this sample into the model itself. So as you can see here, we have a few samples that passed the input gate, meaning they were clean. We have a few samples that was enhanced, meaning correct the noisiness. And there were a few samples that were blocked or too noisy in order to enter into the model. We have also the feedback window, which you can see how much feedback the system received during a specific day. Of course, it should be confirmed or false. If we will move into the inference page, so as you can see, it's very similar to the email use case. But here we have different column. We have the number of items, we have the average confidence, we have the different classes defined by the customer in advance according to the data that is entering into the model, into the system, and the feedback percentage. As for each one of the lines, so we have the inquiry ID, okay, and we have the item ID, meaning for example, in one newspaper, we can have a few different issues. For example, let's say cars, weather, and I don't know, finance. So we want first classify according to those issues or classes, and then say, okay, give me the first article about cars. So for example, here, you can see that we have the inquiry ID, the item ID, the priority, which can be customized according to the customer needs, the prediction itself, which is according to the classes, confidence level, timestamp, status, which again can be customized or can be delivered to, via the API of the customer, input quality, if it's past the input gate or not, filter the noise or not, and if this specific sample receive a feedback. Into the right tab, we can see drill down of a specific article. So as for the classification, we can see that the model classify this specific example into order to show cause. We can scroll down and see the specific article, and then the system asks us if you agree with this prediction according to what is written here. Let's say that we agree with this prediction, and then move to the next one and see also the summary of a specific article. So here we can see the article itself and the classification of a specific article, again, according to predefined classes by the customer. And then we can see also the summary of the specific article. And here also the system will ask us if the quality is good, because again, summarization, this is a subjective area, and it can be very good according to Nurit and less good according to Raj. Therefore, we will need a human feedback here in order to improve the model during time. So let's approve that. And then we can, again, as Raj showed you, retrain the model. Just a second. Okay, we can retrain the model according to the feedback received from the person. And again, we can show the results according to the different parameter defined. Can be precision, can be recall, can be false positive, false negative. We have also a micro and macro F1. And after we saw that the results are better than the previous model, we can deploy it and coming back to the monitoring page, which showing again the different prediction over time, the confidence for each class, the feedback that has been received, and the input quality. Any question about the text summarization use case?
Tamina, Omid, and team. So just, we've showed several different use cases. We've talked about the platform, the ability to hyper customize the platform for our banking and financial services clients. Some of the capabilities that we offer as far as delivering this service in a true kind of SaaS context. So I think it's been a good session so far. perhaps I recommend that we take a slight pause and to see if we can open it up a little bit more to the audience. Are there additional things that specific to use cases that you might be working on that you would like to explore, or to go deeper into different technical aspects of what we've presented? Does that sound like a good idea? How would you like to organize the remaining time? That's great. And comments in the chat are good as well. We can address those. I see some of them are coming in right now. Let's go ahead and take a look about that. So Raj, Savan, and Nurit, there's a comment in the chat saying to describe a little bit more around KYC would be interesting. Okay. And we're pleased for the other participants, any other information in the chat or questions in the chat would be great, and we'll try to address those. Okay, back to you, Raj or Savan.
So I can say a few words, and then Nurit and Raj will add. So basically in the KYC area, we are specialized in two main areas, but of course we, according to our platform and our vision capabilities, which are very advanced, we can do additional things. So basically we are specialized in ID verification, extracting specific data, verify that the ID itself, it's an original ID, and they didn't change the letters. Raj, I think we also have some slide about it.
Can you see my slide?
Yeah.
Yes, we can see the slide now. KYC document fraud detection. Yeah.
Okay, so basically, again, we verified that the ID itself, it's authentic ID, which didn't change the letters. We identify fraud inside the ID itself. We are able to detect small changes, of course, and of course, this is aligned with all the regulation of privacy and GDPR. According to that, also from lighting perspective, we know how to handle that. This is one issue regarding the ID verification, and an additional insight is regarding face recognition. Detecting a specific face, making sure this is a real person and not a picture of a person, and also combine between them, meaning we can detect the ID itself and then I compare it to a specific person that's standing in front of a camera. Basically, it's a cell phone camera, and then making sure that the person is standing in front of the camera is the same person that his image is inside the ID itself. And therefore, we are making sure that the ID is authenticity, and comparing between the person standing in front of the camera and which is the same person at the ID itself, which reduced the onboarding times and costs and validate the solution.
Another arena within KYC, as we know, KYC is a fairly broad arena. AML is part of that whole KYC process. Is this concept called ultimate beneficial ownership, called UBO, and AI is especially natural language processing is exceptionally powerful at being able to tear apart like complex, multi-level, multinational corporate structures. And this can be a very time-consuming task, an expensive task. And we're actually looking at a proof of concept right now with a client to help them solve this ultimate beneficial ownership. And as you know, basically, banks that have a greater than 25%, I don't know what the regulations in Azerbaijan are, but at least in the US and Europe, banks that have greater than 25% direct or indirect ownership of a target company will need to go through enhanced due diligence. So this is a real big problem for compliance folks. And to be able to do that on a real-time basis is even more challenging. So, sorry? So what we're doing is, as Sivan showed, we're using a combination of things like text summarization, named entity recognition, and there'll be some object detection using computer vision. You combine the three of them, and we're looking to solve this particular problem for a client. So UBO is also a part of the KYC process. Any questions on that front?
Mahmoud, without putting you on the spot, are you able to share kind of what aspects within KYC are interesting to you or your organization, or are there any particular areas that you're investigating? And we're happy to kind of discuss those in a little bit more detail, and also open to any other questions. Okay, thank you. Taminda, Dov, should we poll the audience? How would you like to use the remaining time for the meeting today?
Maybe you can share some of your experience with AI so far and what you would like to improve with this experience.
I think that most of the forum is technical, but I think it's important to give them an idea of the way that they can connect to BehindMind. Cost-wise, what is a good model that you can suggest them?
Got it. Okay, so we're happy to take any technical questions as the time remains. We're also available to meet individually with interested parties to talk a little bit about specific use cases. The solution is delivered as a service, so we do not charge implementation, configuration costs. The way that we partner with our clients is around a SaaS subscription. So we get together with them, we look at the complexity of the use case, talk through what the requirements would be, and then we build a subscription proposal that covers not only the initial setup, the running and operating of the solution, but also the ongoing kind of evergreen AI delivery of the solution and use case.
One more question I would ask, in terms of cybersecurity, can you assist in this arena also?
That's an interesting area, and we've touched on, I think, a few comments earlier in the conversation. Nurit, would you take that question maybe?
Yes, sure. So we have developed a tool that analyze sensors data, many sensors, each sensor separately and all the data together. And for each sensor over time, it finds the anomalies. And in that way, the alerts are related to different events that are anomalies in these sensors or in many sensors together on a time series manner. Is that clear? This is a tool that we developed.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm asking the question because I know that people are more shy. Can you say a little bit about your actual customers, your experience in the banking area?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Some information about clients that you are serving today. What is the history of these banks?
Yes, so we are working with the first bank of Israel on this special use case. It's a very special use case because each sensor has its own behavior related to the organization and the clients of these banks. And it is a very specific and a customized use case for the network of our customer, of the bank. So we have finished the POC and we have proven the AI ability to find attacks and to find anomalies, also operational anomalies in the network, even for end stations within the network. And now we are proceeding to integrate it within the bank's systems. This is the right phase that we are right now.
It's very impressive.
Yes, it's a very interesting solution. And the idea is this is, of course, out of the box, meaning it's a different way to think how to find anomalies, because this is especially finding the unknown unknowns that you have, because it's an unsupervised research, and it's not a rule-based anomalies such as used in the firewalls and all the software that you regularly use in your organization SOC. So it's a really out-of-the-box approach to find anomalies within your network.
Yeah, and I would just add, and in addition to Nurit's comments, if you look at, the fraud risk scoring, different aspects of KYC, the text summarization, we also have computer vision projects around the verification of IDs and other things like that. So we have a number of different projects that are underway across significant banking estates, both in the US, Europe, and Middle East and Israel, some of which we can talk openly about, some of which are covered under NDA, but happy to go deeper with any audience members, including technical attendees to today's call in a follow-up session. Happy to do that. We can go through a platform diagram. We can talk a little bit about how we would address your specific use case.
Hi, Javid, this is Raj. Just a quick question from my side. Just in terms of implementation of AI in general in Azerbaijan in the banking space, I know that you've mentioned something about KYC and other use cases, but are there use cases that stand out to you where you feel like there's a real need to fulfill at this juncture? Because I talked through many of the possibilities that we can cover, and they're very broad, obviously, right? I think the end game over here is hopefully not just to educate, but also to see whether we can work collaboratively with one or two of your banks to help solve a particular pain point in your AI transformation process. Do any use cases come to mind at this stage other than the cyber-related use case?
I guess there are three families of use cases that can be relevant to your processes. First, decision-making accelerated by AI. For example, approval of loans, underwriting of new customers, every decision that is made, even classifying queries, okay? These are all decisions that can be made in a very fast way with AI. Learning from the past, how you made decisions in the past and inference it for the future data that you will have. So this is one family. Another family is a family regarding transactionals that are anomalous, such as AML, or any kind of fraud that you have, even with credit cards or any transaction within the manager accounts. Maybe changes in the accounts that are suspicious, things like that. This is the second family. And I believe that the third family is really add-ons like know your customer, the understanding if the ID is fraud or not. This is something like an add-on to a different process. I think this taxonomy can help you maybe to figure out where do you want to improve your system, where do you want to improve your processes in the decision-making part, helping customers to be more satisfied.
I think it's very understandable, we are talking now to actually the association for all the banks. So it's a very big forum. I think the Clear and the company was very well presented. And I suggest that the next stage is to work one-on-one with the interesting banks. It's very hard to work to 30, 40 banks at the same time.
Yeah,
So I think we should have let them a day or two to think, and the banker that would like to continue will start to connect one-on-one, and hopefully we'll advance.
for sure. And this is a very important thing to emphasize. It's always about the strategy of the bank and how AI can accelerate it. We always start with the strategy. Like some bank in Israel, cybersecurity is their strategy, and protecting their network and protecting the data is the strategy. And another bank is giving more loans. This is the strategy. So it always have to serve the strategy. So it's always personal. I agree with you, Dov.
Zakir Ma'alem, Kamal, is it okay?
Yeah.
So I suggest, I think it's, is there no other question? We will take it from here forward.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. Happy to go as deep with secondary meetings and audiences. We'll share the presentation. I'm sure there's a lot of unique projects that each individual banking organization is working on or cares about. And in those follow-on discussions, Dov and team, we're happy to kind of bring that into more detail. And I just want to thank everybody for their time today and the engagement, and looking forward to next steps with each of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.